persons who cannot do the job because they want a salary or they want to control. And what happens is that our country doesn't go forward, or we don't have proper programs. I can see what's going on with agriculture, see what's going on with tourism, see what went on with Ross, see where we are as a country, and you begin to realize that we are not going forward, partly because the right people, the people who are trained, who are qualified, who are appropriate, are not, it's like, as a good friend of mine would say, it's like the worst of us leading the rest of us, when it should be the opposite, when it should be the best of us. I mean, I don't really like the word best of us, because we all have our strengths. Because I may be good at one thing and you might be good at another, but we've got to put the right people to do the right things. But these guys don't do that, and therefore our country is suffering tremendously. Governance is important. I'm taking time to explain those things because I want the people who are listening to understand that when we talk about governance and corruption, we are not interested in how they live, because we know they do not live well, and who can be jealous of that? What we're interested in is that the monies of the country not being available to alleviate poverty, to lift our people up, to make our country, to get to the dream that we want. That is the country we want, and that is what government does. It prevents us from getting there. So we want a country where we address these things. But beyond the technical governance, the political governance, there are two important reasons why the political governance, beyond the technical elements that I referred, why we have to it fails us sometimes. The system of governance we have, part of what we suffer from is what we call the short-term focus, where governments in power, and to some extent, and our system, political parties, those in power, those in opposition, often we are guided by getting into winning the next election. And therefore, especially the government in power tends to do things that are not necessarily good, right for the country. They're doing it because it may give them an advantage in the short term to get into power, but it is not the right thing to do. And often, as opposition parties too, sometimes opposition parties, I'm not just talking about Dominica, it's maybe everywhere. Sometimes we do not oppose something because we think, boy, maybe the people will want this thing. But we've got to say when something is good or when something is wrong. But our system kind of forces us there. I'm saying that to say, in the Dominica want, we have to really look some of these systems that we use, whether they are appropriate for all kinds of countries, whether we need to tweak them and adjust them in certain ways. But beyond that short-term thing, which affects all of our countries, especially our poor countries, there is the several features of our governance system that we need to strengthen in order to prevent its abuse. Our checks and balance institutions definitely need to be, our procurement, as I've said before. There are many other elements that we need to relook to ensure that those who are given the authority, those who are in power, are doing what they ought to be doing. So we really want to see a Dominica where these things are addressed. It has to start with electoral reform. It has to include strengthening our checks and balance institutions. It has to ensure that we look at our political system of governance. So let me jump, because I suspect I have already gone over the time. But I want us to understand that there are some foundation things that we need to be thinking of. If we want the kind of country that we all want, the kind of dream that we want, if we want to get there, governance is important. But there are some things that are the foundation to a culture of good governance that as a people, even now, we've got to begin to, and I think we're already doing it, but we've got to keep working towards those things. We want a country where the governance of the country is built on integrity. That's just another word for governance, good governance, so to speak. And this is something that has its foundation in scripture. Those of you who are listening, who are familiar with the Bible, those of you who are here, it has its foundation in scripture. And I often use that verse that says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. But let's unpack that a little bit. This year, righteousness exalts the nation. What do you really think it means? It means when you govern rightly, the mere fact that it talks about the nation, it's speaking to governance, it's speaking to the affairs of man and nation and how you control, how you go about doing the country's business. So when the scripture says righteousness exalts the nation, it's talking about good governance. When you govern well, your country will do well. So do you see why we are not doing well? Because we are not governing well. The foundation is very much in the scripture. And when the scripture goes on to say sin is a reproach to any people, you know what that's, put it another way? When you govern badly, your country will fall. That's basically what it says. That's the scripture, that's not me. That's the scripture. So we want a country where we return to that righteous standard, that standard of integrity. That's our dream for governance in our land. In line with the above, we want the culture of corruption to be stamped out from our country. Now, let me tell you, if we are very honest here, we would say, all of us, we can say, there is a culture of corruption in our country. We know that from growing up. We know that it didn't start with scary. I know. But you know what a good government does? A good government recognizes when there's a bad culture in the land. And that good government works to turn it around. This government have not done that. But what a bad government does instead, and I'll end with that, a bad government on the other hand, it exploits that culture. It makes it worse. And that's exactly what we have going on here. So just to end, let me say, the other thing is that all of us here embrace the culture, the righteous culture, embrace a good culture, a better moral standard. But let all of that boil down into one other thing, that we all get to the principle of putting Dominica first. Putting Dominica first is not putting our party first, not putting our pockets first, not taking 90% for yourself and giving the country 10% as the Al Jazeera report said. That is what I want all of us to get to. Dominica first. And that is the dream. If we could put Dominica first, we will surely get to that dream.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's only get a quick input from the rest of the other panelists, and if possible, if any of you in the audience would want to make some comments on the question of electoral reform. And I want to shoot this question again. Do you believe that Dominica, we will go anywhere as a country if we are to remain under the status quo of what exists with the electoral system? Mr. Linton, what do you think?
Chairman, thanks. I'm going to make a few remarks about the Dominican Dream and exploring the Dominican Dream, which essentially is what I came here tonight to discuss. And I want to say that success in life is about the realization of worthwhile dreams. So dreaming is a good thing. We are, and so we dream. But they're dreams, they're imaginations, they're illusions, they're hallucinations. And of course, they're dreams that turn into nightmares. We dream of what should come or what we would like to become. And we make those dreams from within the confines of our gift of life, our place of birth or residence, and the human values that we hold dear, our health and energy to live life, to take on the world. The love we give, the love we receive, the love we share with family, friends, with co-workers, with connections. The gratitude, appreciation, the kindness and compassion that we give and we receive. The integrity of our social and professional relationships and engagements. The blessings of growth in peace and happiness. So think of our ancestors, the Maroons who fought relentlessly against slavery so that we could be free. The Kalinago, whose religion and whose language gifted us lessons of nature, island life that we are still unwilling to learn. Think of Rastafari, and the nature island living experience we continue to take for granted. Whether or not we have taken notice, we have been dreaming. We have been dreaming about our Isle of Beauty, our Isle of Splendor, our Isle to all so sweet and fair, dreaming that all must surely gaze in wonder at our gifts so rich and rare, dreaming that our rivers, valleys, hills, and mountains, and all the gifts that we extol, and the healthy land so like all fountains, will give us cheer that warms our soul. We dream that God has blessed our Dominica with a clime benign and bright, with pastures green and flowers of beauty that fill all with pure delight. We dream of being a people strong and healthy, full of godly reverent fear, and ever seeking to praise God for those gifts so rich and rare. We dream of coming forward as the sons and daughters of this gem beyond compare, to strive for honor, to do the right, to be firm and fair. We dream of toiling with hearts and hands and voices because we must prosper. We dream of sounding the call in which everyone rejoices, all for each and each for all. The dream of striving, not simply to survive, but to thrive, to prosper, rejoicing in the human development discipline of all living for each and each living for all. It's a dream that comes to us from the wisdom of the ages, from the Vedas of ancient India to the modern day leaders of Christian faith. And I quote, "Nothing in nature lives for itself. Rivers don't drink their own water. Clouds do not swallow their own rain. Trees don't eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine for itself. And flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. Life is good when you're happy, but it is much better when others are happy because of you." End of quote. The Dominican Dream, which we have never written down or even spoken about specifically like other countries have done, is that collection of nature island blessings, which is so special to us, that on one hand, we don't want to leave it, and on the other hand, we yearn to come back to it whenever circumstances force us to leave it. You feel me? You with me? Yeah. We dream of Dominica first. We dream of Dominica for Dominicans at home and abroad. The dream is to be a free, healthy, happy person, enjoying peace, growth, and prosperity in the best place to live, the best place to work, and the best place to enjoy life. And unfortunately, the decisions we have taken, the policies we have pursued, especially in the last 2 decades, have frustrated the realization of that dream. Instead, we've been locked into an inefficient and fossil fuel dependent infrastructure and unattractive, unhealthy, unsustainable lifestyles. We're not who we are. There's a Dominican teenager who told me a few years ago, quote, "We need to become who we are." We need national recognition and acceptance of the very simple truth that we are citizens of a country born to shine as the nature island of the world, the Isle of Beauty, the Isle of Splendor. We live, we dream as nature island people, united in the unity of diversity that defines nature. The dream is to thrive as free people on equality and justice according to the rules of divine order. The dream is to govern and sustain ourselves in peaceful coexistence, living in harmony with nature. That is who we are. Nature island people, God-fearing, strong, healthy, and as resilient as the natural environment. That is where we are strong. Nature island strong. That is why it is so difficult for us. The last 2 decades of lost progress to the games of petty partisan politics and the folly of governance that is dedicated to uniting people with hate have really reversed the clock on our civility. Unfair elections, theft of elections, bribery, cheating in elections is anti-nature and are not the dreams of Nature Island people, and therefore they have no part in the governance of the Nature Island, of Nature Island people, by Nature Island people, for Nature Island people. We have to leave the dream killers behind. The political, the religious, the other divisions we've created for ourselves, and discipline ourselves to become free, united, peaceful, harmonious, self-sustaining people that we truly are. So, as we go forward, the frustration of the dreams that we have should concern us all. And the things that frustrate those dreams can narrow it down to governance. And he makes no bones about that. But we have to be mindful of who we are. Because even when governance changes, there's going to be that necessity for self-discovery. What does this land mean to us? What do we mean to it? And, you know, for me, it's a very serious offense against humanity. For the Isle of Beauty and the Isle of Splendor, the nature island of the world, the nation with the most generous blessing of green per capita on God's earth, to have so many of its precious children frustrated, sick, unemployed, condemned to hopeless dependency in lives of everlasting poverty. We don't dream about poverty. We dream about prosperity. We dream about a life of comfort, a life where we take care of our own, a life where we are thriving and growing. And that is only going to happen for all of us when we become who we are, when we ensure that our agriculture secures our health and wellness by making us self-sufficient in natural food and drink, and providing plant-based solutions for medical needs. By sharing these blessings with the world in need, we will grow our economy and generate wealth like we have never seen before. The productive utilization of our fertile land, growing a well-planned mix of bananas, of plantains, coconuts, root tubers, coffee, cocoa, cashews, ginger, vanilla, marijuana, Nature Island flowers. We can set the stage to earn hundreds of millions of dollars annually from the export of these commodities and the health and wellness products that can be manufactured from them. Thousands of new sustainable jobs will be created, and equitable value chain participation for all stakeholders in the industries developed around our gift of Nature Island plants will ensure fair shares of the benefit of wealth creation for all. And so I dream. I have a dream that one day Nature Island Dominica will embrace expanding opportunities in the green economy, the blue economy, the orange economy, and earn itself a worthwhile place in the international trade of goods and services. I have a dream that one day Dominican lives will really matter in Dominica. Dominica will be first, and Dominica will be for Dominicans at home and abroad in a system of government that allows our citizens to work, create and grow enterprise, and participate in the build-out of the national development infrastructure without fear or favor, affection or ill will. I have a dream that one day we will create a success story of Nature Island citizen engagement and participation that brings government, people, businesses, civil society groups, and neighborhoods in a collective effort to make Dominica the authentic Nature Island of the world. I have a dream that we will establish a Nature Island context for education and health care that ground them in the scope and human development benefits of our natural resources. I have a dream that we'll infect our culture with the values, attitudes, and behaviors that will allow our ecosystems or biodiversity to support our sustainability. I have a dream that we will set and achieve aggressive targets for water quality, food security, clean air, green businesses, green jobs, climate resilience, minimizing our carbon footprint, reducing consumption, and eliminating waste. I have a dream that one day our Nature Island people will come to terms with the truth, like Jose Marti did many moons ago, that he who uses the office he owes to voters wrongfully and against them is a thief. That he who receives money in trust for the benefit of its owner and uses it either for his own interest or against the wishes of its rightful owner is a thief. I have a dream that one day liars, cheats, and thieves will disappear from the governance of Dominica and will no longer cost billions of our dollars from the sale of our citizenship to rest in foreign lands while we struggle. I have a dream that one day the best of us will lead the rest of us. The best of us will accept sacred responsibility to take care of the rest of us, who will leverage the power to commit governance into the hands of the best of us forever and ever. In the immortal dream of our national anthem, all the sons and daughters of this gem beyond compare to embrace this vision of hope that invites us to toil with our hearts and hands and voices to prosper and song the call in which everyone rejoices, all for each and each for all. Do I think the dream is attainable? Mr. Chairman, yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linton. And, you know, we could be asking the question, what, where did we go wrong? That looking back 42 years or 43 years ago, when we obtained our national independence, we had so many thriving things in Dominica. We had so many thriving things in Dominica. Our culture was blooming. In fact, at that time, I was a member of the People's Action Theater, and we were rolling out plays like, you know, it was Hollywood, you know, to the extent that at one stage, Alwyn Bully suggested that we go professional in the Caribbean, 1978. Our bananas were booming. Even our construction. You know, we had so many of our builders and contractors building our own edifices. And today, 43 years later, we are considered to be incapable of doing things that we did so many decades ago. At this stage, let me only invite you, the audience, if you have any questions to ask at this stage, because we want to be as interactive as possible. If you want to make any comment on the two presentations that we have had so far. Because for me personally, I believe that governance of this country, if it is not put right, we will continue to go down the precipice. And this is why electoral reform is so important, because unless you put a clamp on this thing, so that people who really deserve, people who deserve to govern the nation are the ones who are allowed to, and not by those type of deceitful means that we have been seeing over the last few years. I do not care who wins an election. I just want it to be free and fair. And what is so difficult about that for all Dominicans, whether they are red, green, blue, purple, to accept that basic principle what we would consider to be decency, of human decency. So brothers and sisters, let me give you the opportunity, if any of you is willing to make a contribution right now to, yes, sir?
So we know what the problem is, right? So we know what the problem is. So what's the solution?
This is why we're here tonight, looking at the dream and the things that we want to do together.
Yeah, because that's a real serious situation.
Yeah,
You know,
this is
because-
basically what we're here
Because
tonight.
even myself, right? So I ran track and field for Dominica for a long time. And that was before we had the stadium. And yet we got a stadium that plunged everything that we did before that stadium. And a change needs to be made. You know, a real change needs to be made because this is.
That was Austin Harris or Junior Harris, national athlete. And I agree with him. In athletics, we've moved backwards about 30 years. We didn't have all this. We had Windsor Park. We had basketball, netball, athletics, cricket, just name it in Windsor Park. Today, Windsor Park is for CO. Now, as a sitting parliamentarian, on the question of governance and electoral reform, I am saying to the people of Rosenhof on the ground that if we do not, because we're hearing whispers of an election before electoral reform, I am telling the people who voted for me in Rosenhof, if we do not get electoral reform, I cannot be the candidate. And I know that I will be the candidate. So it means that we as a people have to do something to make electoral reform happen. It's not going to be handed to us. I've been saying that for a very long time. We must be resolute when on the question of governance, which two of the presenters touched on. We can't go anywhere. And we must insist as a people that we must take electoral reform by its bootstrap. That's the only way. You ask, that's part of the answer. We can't be begging, over free election cycles for electoral reform, and all the other things, the fancy plans of what we should be doing, the marijuana, agriculture, organic this and organic that, factories, all of that must have, because the government, that's the sitting government, is 22 years in office, and all we're doing is losing industry. We lose Ross, we lose the banana industry. Governments give them hotels, it can't open, which is the Morocco Hotel. There was the coffee plant, it can't open. Geothermal, we spent $100 million, and it's not going anywhere. So the question, it has to start with a fresh and free and fair election. And to get that free and fair election, we must have electoral reform, and we must take it.
All right. Mackenzie, if I can just jump in and
Since you asked the question, what's the solution? Thanks, Danny. Part of the solution is all of us must let our voices heard. It can no longer be just a political party or two political parties are free. We need the Council of Churches to be loud and clear. We need the Evangelical Association to be loud and clear. You are citizens as well. We need the policemen, the many, many, many good policemen that we know that are there, to be loud and clear. We need the unions to be loud and clear. If all of us are very loud and clear, that it sends us message that we mean business. That is where it starts. From there, we will have to do whatever is morally right to defend our freedom and to defend our country. We will take it as we go.
hey, Mackenzie, can you hear me okay? Guys, hear me out there?
Okay, let me, Ronald Landa, yeah. Esquire. You, treating you with like His Majesty himself, boy.
What I would like to do is to reiterate the point that was made by the brother. And we need to focus more on the strategies for fulfilling those wonderful dreams of restoring the buoyancy in our economy for our benefit. So what I'd like to see for the rest, a significant portion of the rest of the discussion, where we could focus on strategies of going forward. NJAM, UWP, Freedom Party. Let's look at the strategies, what we need to do, what areas that we can focus on. You are at a disadvantageous position at this point in time. Notwithstanding, you can critically review the current situation and come up with concrete strategies that you can share with the population of the ways of going forward. And I think this is the area we need to focus on.
Okay. All right, let me, at this stage, introduce our virtual participants. And let me also take the opportunity to apologize for the absence of Senator Annette Sanford, who was the female participant on the panel. Something came up and she could not make it this evening, but she sent her apologies. So let me at this stage introduce Mr. Bernard Ito, who is our virtual participant, who is in fact the leader of the Dominica Freedom Party. Mr. Ito.
Thank you, Severin, and welcome, hello, and greetings to all the participants there in the PSU Center and all over online, on radio, and wherever we may be as a community of Dominicans to have this discussion, to have this tete-a-tete, to have this dialogue. I think it's very, very important. And I'm just up here. I'm in Texas right now, and for a very specific reason, it is to revisit and to be with the graduates, the Dominican graduates, who are graduating in droves. Over 30 students graduating from the Midwestern State University program that was started many months ago by several people, myself included, to set up a program where we would afford opportunities to young people to have a shot at developing human capital. And that's my reason for my absence. And I apologize for not being there in person, but these missions as well, to develop a network and a community of Dominicans wherever they may reside is an important one as well. But we have some time where I'll get into a longer discussion, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the dream and the question about, do we have a dream in Dominica? Is there a dream in Dominica? And my answer, maybe a contrarian one, is yes, definitely we have a dream in Dominica. But the question is, whose dream is it? And is it a sort of dream that the majority of us want and buy into? There is no society that does not operate within a certain set of psychological points that drive it forward. Every society has its impulses that govern what happens. It's not happenstance, it's deliberate. There's a certain deliberateness in every society, and for lack of a better word, we can call that deliberate progress of that society its dream. It's organizing psychological energy, if you will. That you can define as the dream of a society. But whose dream is it? What happened is the Dominican Dream that Sever talked about earlier, where we were in the 70s and the 80s, and we were making progress in a collective dream, in a collective definition of self, the collective definition of progress, has shrunk enormously to the dream of a few. And that is the tipping point that has occurred in our society. The dream exists, but the dream is no longer widely shared. It is the dream, the collective imagination of a few who have positioned themselves and have taken the reins of power in Dominica and has redefined what the Dominican dream should be. And the Dominican dream right now appears to be enriching a few at the expense of the many. It seems to be untold wealth for a minority by utilizing the resources of us all. That seems to be what is occurring right now. And that is the redefinition of the dream. And so do we have a dream? Yes, we have a dream. It's a very bad dream. And the struggle, therefore, is to take back control of the dream, to make Dominica's dream once again a collective dream, as Mr. Linton said, as other panelists have said, that includes all of our well-being. Because what is development? Development is progress. You could categorize it as an increase in freedom, increasing economic freedom over time, increasing political freedom, increasing social freedom, self-expression, self-actualization, the right to say and to have political beliefs and persecuted for it, the right to a good economic life, so that you are not constrained in your own personal dreams by economic hardships. And so increasing freedom is a simple way to define progress. And development is the expansion of those freedoms by a purposeful people. And I say purposeful people because that is very important. Because purpose, having a sense of self and a sense of destination and destiny, is really the fuel that will drive our development. And that is one of the things that have been lost. We have lost the emotional energy because we are no longer engaged by our government, by leadership, to participate in a dream that is inspiring, in a vision that motivates, in a vision that says to us, we are building something here, boy, together that's going to be spectacular. There's no sense of a collective purpose, a purposefulness, a mission-oriented society. China says to every citizen, we are on a path to become the greatest nation in the world in 50 years, and they started 30 years ago, so they're 20 years old. And they have been deliberately working on that goal to be reestablish the great Chinese nation. They are on a purposeful path, and so should we. We are drifting with no purpose, no sense of self. We do not teach history. We do not know who we are, who our ancestors were, why it matters, why we should do something as people of African descent. We should set a vision to be the greatest nation on earth of people of African descent. One place on earth where we do it right. One place on earth where we excel. A model Black nation in this planet of ours. And why not? Because we have all the ingredients to do so. If there's one thing Dominicans are good at and treasure and strive after is education, is being good, competent at what we do. And so we have all the human capital that we have to establish this thing. And so when people say, well, what are the alternatives? The alternatives are bountiful and pretty much endless. There are strategies to develop Dominica into a developed country. I would put my bet on it within 25 to 30 years. This is especially so now that we have moved into the digital era, where you have the resources, the capital that you need in your head. We don't need tons of physical capital anymore to develop our island. What we need is intellectual capital, human capital, skills, capabilities, and training, but to a purposeful end, to transform our economy into a digital economy, into an economy based on knowledge, ideas, an economy based on adding value to the value chain and the global value chain, and aspiring to become a country that is based on those principles. But what is stopping us? What is stopping us is the lack of vision, of a government because they, as I said, their dream is not shared, that dream at all. That dream does not exist to them. We do not have a collective dream of that. Their dream is to be successful for them. But their strategy to be successful for them at odds to be successful for us. Because they have no imagination, no creativity, no business acumen, no innovation capability, no technical understanding, no technical leadership, technical management to bring about this destiny that we speak about. They are good at politicking, but politicking can bring you riches in only one specific way, by taking advantage of wealth that already exists and transferring it into your hands. But political strategy and political intelligence in that way does not create economic wealth for all. What you need is people that can create wealth, not people who can reposition wealth or extract existing wealth into their hands. We need people who can grow the economic pie, not people who will take 5/8 of the pie and give us the crown. And that is the fundamental problem that we face as a society. We have simply lost control of the dream. The dream exists, it's not our dream anymore. It is their dream. And what we must do as a society is to take back that dream. And as I've said many places and in public forums, on walks and so on, we need to get the government back in its lane. Back in its lane so that we can have this collective dream once again. I have a lot more specifics to talk about in terms of how we get there, the sort of economic policies we need to pursue, the sort of people we need to put in the right places. Because the key to all of this is to point the bus in the right direction, to have a destination. We know where we're going. We're not just driving aimlessly, liming. We know where we're going. We have to build the right kind of bus to get there. We've got to get the right people on that bus. And further, we've got to get the right people into the right seats on that bus. That is the sort of things that we need to do to get the right people into the right positions so that we can begin to build that shining city in the sea that Dominica should be. And we can do it. As we said, if there's any people we could have put in there not to do it, it's the current administration. There are many options available to us. The best people are out there to do it, right here with you to do it. And it's a travesty to hear people say, if not scared, who? I mean, it's just the most ridiculous thing. In fact, they should say, if you want to drive this country into the ground, if not scared, who? But the options exist. I'll stop there for now. We'll get into a lot more discussion on all these issues.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this question of if not CBI, what? If not scare it, who? And those type of things. I believe that when we close the discussion this evening, we'll realize that Dominica is missing quite a bit, because these type of discussions have become something very rare. And one of the things that I would like us to do going forward is to challenge our leaders to please come forward and have this type of discussion. You know, we have been waiting for the last 22 years to see the Prime Minister of the country and the leader of the opposition and other leaders of other political parties sit at a table like this and discuss the issues facing the nation. Sadly, the last time it happened was in 2000, during the election campaign of 2000, when Rosie Douglas, Charles Savarin, and Edison James sat in a debate. So for the last 22 years, we have not seen this type of interaction with our leaders where we can question them. And we cannot say that it is a mistake. It is in fact calculated that the less information that Dominicans have at their disposal in exposing the truth is the easier that they get brainwashed and dominated with. At this stage, I'm still going, just before we go to Dr. Fontaine, if anyone wants to make an intervention from the audience, we would gladly accommodate you. If not, we will be moving with Dr. Fontaine. He was the one, in fact, who came up with the idea of exploring the Dominican Dream. And it is, in fact, a very good concept. How many of us have ever thought of it? What are we dreaming of? You know what? You know, we see an exodus of our brains, that many of our young people who graduate from universities. In fact, I was looking at a photograph of the number of young Dominicans who graduated from just one university in the United States over the weekend. And it was frightening because you're saying, what are they going to do? And from the information that we get, 99% of them actually have no interest in returning to Dominica. You know, and it touches me because many moons ago when I graduated, I could not wait for me to pick up my certificate and get back home. And today we are seeing a total reversal of this level of patriotism. But it's not the young people's fault, because when you come back with a university degree and then you are asked to be an employee of NEP, what do you expect? So these are some of the things that we have to explore. What type of enabling environment that we have to create in Dominica, in all the possibilities that we have on this island, that we could bring back our young people and our brains. The one that touches me the most is how can we have a facility at Ross, the old Ross facility, going to waste, and we do not have what it takes to establish a medical school, to establish a research and development center for the development of cannabis, climate change, and all the other things that we should be pursuing as the nature isle of the Caribbean. In exploring the Dominican Dream, let me introduce to you Dr. Thompson Fontaine. He could be hailing from Africa or anywhere else, but I will tell you, he hails from the village of Grand Fond. So, Dr. Fontaine.
Thank you very much, Sev, and good night to my fellow panelists, Honorable Ellis Linton, Ken Vital, and Bernard Ito, and to you in here with us tonight. Let me say good night, a special good night to you. Thank you for coming out tonight. You could be anywhere else. The fact that you chose to be here with us in this all-important discussion, I think, speaks volumes. And to those who are tuned in via the internet, I understand that there were hundreds and hundreds of people who are locked in, listening to the radio stations and also on Facebook. A very good night to all of you. I've been thinking a lot this past few days, and in particular about the direction that our country is headed. And it was in the process of this reflection that I contemplated the Dominican Dream. I started to think about what does Dominica mean to every one of us? How do the young people in particular see Dominica? Do they see a future in Dominica? Or are they simply looking to get out? And when you hear 99% of our graduates are not willing to come back to Dominica, that is sad. You know, Dominica happens to be one of the more blessed countries in the world with regards to resources. We have the renewable resources, we have the rich, fertile land, and above all, we have the human resource. The sad thing about Dominica is that the majority of our human resource, they're out there in various parts of the world, in South Sudan, in the United States, and Guadeloupe, in St. Martin, even Tortola, I'm told, yeah. Everywhere else but Dominica. And that is very frustrating. You know, I had the opportunity to speak to many people over this past few days. And I was trying to get a sense as to where people are with regards to how they view Dominica. One of the things that is very clear is that we have but I'll use a big word, a monstrosity. Nuni go wash as shimea, or go pit and wash as shimea. And that to me, you know, Harris asked, you know, I know Harris will go back in the days of track and field, and so it's good to see you. That's where we start, I believe. I believe we start by getting rid of this governance in Dominica. That, to me, fundamentally is the major problem with Dominica. You know, and it's not just because I mean, it's nothing personal. It's not just because this government continues to misbehave, but it's the fact that they're denying so much of Dominicans with an opportunity to dream, an opportunity to live a fulfilled life. The dream for a lot of Dominicans are gone. I mean, when your dream is reduced to hopefully residing in an apartment building that you don't own, when your dream is reduced to boasting to your school teacher that your pal rep got you shoes, your pal rep got you books, or your pal rep is responsible for getting you to school, then we have a problem. It means effectively that this dream is gone. Because this young child who is boasting about or who not necessarily boasting, but who is telling his teacher, and I'm not saying that because I heard it from a teacher that was telling me about her children in the class who boast about that kind of thing. The child is not looking up to its parent. The child is not saying, well, my dad worked 2 jobs, or my dad worked hard to buy me shoes. I have the easy way out. I can go to my parent. So in a way, we've lost even the sense of working hard, even the sense of looking forward to something. And that to me is worrisome. The Dominican dream should be one that is able to utilize all of our resources. I mean, imagine if we could really become the first climate resilient country in the world, where we are able to have everything on renewable energy, because we have every single one of the renewable energies in the world. Every single one resides on this little island of ours, this 30 by 15-mile island. Every single one. Sunshine, geothermal, wave, wind. These are the renewable sources, and they're all here and all in abundance in Dominica. So can we find a way to power our houses? Can we find a way to cut our electricity bills by 75% if we switch towards renewable energies? Can we find a way to create the kind of jobs that are paying more than $4 an hour? Can we, for example, move to a 15 per hour minimum wage in Dominica? I mean, these are some of the things that we have to question ourselves about. And from where I sit, we've missed it so terribly. You know, when I speak to people on the street and when I hear the stories that have been told. I met this fisherman in Port Cassé who told me that a few days before I spoke to him that he was so happy that he could give his neighbor a hot meal, you know, because he was able to give a fish. Not only did he give a fish that he had, but he had to go back into his kitchen, take some lentils, take some rice to give to this neighbor so she could have a warm meal. That's where we are in Dominica today. And you know, how do we share? How do we share the wealth? Because in this same country, we have individuals who are ridiculously rich, who should not have been rich because they did not work for it, but instead they use the resources of the state to enrich themselves. And at the end of the day, the majority of Dominicans are catching hell. This is the go wash I'm talking about. This is the hindrance to the progress that we need. So in terms of solutions, the first thing you do, you get rid of this administration. And that's why I think it's important going forward that every right-thinking Dominican, every Dominican who believes that this government has failed should unite. Forget about our differences. Unite among this common purpose. Because don't fool yourself, until we get rid of this administration, we will continue to suffer. Until we get rid of this administration, every young child in Dominica will be dreaming of going overseas and not coming back. Every adult who gets a chance to get a green card will grab it and run overseas. Let's not fool ourselves about that. It is happening. Dominica is the only country in the world, that has a negative population growth that is not related to war or conflict. The only country. Every other country in the world, we call what the natural growth rate, which means if you subtract your births, your deaths from your births, then you get a natural increase in population. And by the rule of 72, the rule of 72 says that you divide 72 by whatever growth rate. So if you're growing, for example, by 6%, it should take 12 years for your population to double. Right? So if you want to see how quickly something will double, divide the growth rate, 72 over that growth rate, and that's how long it will take for that to double. So if you're going by 6%, 72 over 6, that's 12. 12 years it should take for a population to move from 70,000 to 140,000, just 12 years. Just based on our natural increase. But this natural increase is being reduced by the large numbers of persons migrating overseas. And that's where the problem is. So we've not been able to grow sustainably the country. And that poses all sorts of problems for Dominica. Because everywhere else you have this growth. You see a lot more development, you see a lot more increase. And what about our development? Why is it that we are so constrained in our development? Why have we not been able to realize the growth that was realized in the past? I'm a very good student of history. I love studying history. And when you look back into history, you see Dominica exporting to the United States, exporting to Trinidad, exporting to the UK, exporting its bananas, its fresh fruit. There was a time in the 1800s when Dominica, the United States wanted, the only country the United States wanted to annex was Dominica, long before the Virgin Islands became part of the US, because it was sold to Denmark. It's when they did not get Dominica, they turned their attention to St. Croix, St. Thomas, and so on. But they really wanted Dominica because they saw the potential that was in Dominica. And this potential has not diminished. What has happened is that we have failed to realize this potential. And for the very simple reason that we have failed to choose good leaders, a point well made by all of the panelists. And that is the fundamental thing. And that's why I would encourage all of us to think very clearly about how we move forward. Think very clearly about how we get rid of this administration. And one of the key ways to do this is through electoral reform. Because electoral reform will prevent the mockery of our democracy that we observed December 19, 2019, when planes were lined up on the runway like it was JFK. The mockery that we saw of our democracy. The way you prevent that mockery is to have electoral reforms. And we should, as Dominicans, demand it. This is a right of our democracy. And we should always continue to demand it until we have it. So that's one way we can begin to remove this big stone. Okay. When there is a stone in the road, you find a caterpillar, you find something that is more powerful than this to clear it. So the way you clear this road, you begin to clear this, is with electoral reform. The second thing is for us to wean ourselves from this dependency that I spoke about. This dependency on a power rep to do for us. Parents relinquishing their responsibilities to a PAL rep. You've got to show the example to your children. You know, and the way you do that is you yourself as a parent not relying on the government handout, but demanding the government to give you a job. A few months ago in Ghana, the government decided to distribute rice to a certain village, and a riot broke out. They chased the government away, they dumped the rice. They said, we don't want rice, we want jobs. Because with jobs, we can not only can we buy rice, we can buy steak, we can buy what we want, we can take cruise trips when we wish, we can take holidays when we wish, and that is what we should be demanding. That is what I'm talking about, the Dominican Dream, where you have this level of independence. You have a choice of a job. This government has not created jobs. I talk about negative population growth. We've had negative growth as well in job creation. One of the few countries that is doing that. Instead of growing jobs, instead of increasing industry, instead of having new factories, instead of having additional medical schools, we are losing jobs. We've lost over 4,000 jobs over the past few years. So negative population growth, negative job creation. It means we can't go anywhere. We are effectively stuck until we take matters into our own hands. And that is why I'm very happy tonight that we're having this conversation. Because when we begin to talk and when we begin to encourage our neighbors, I understand that there is a different way, but I realize that in Dominica, there is an entire generation of young people under the age of 30. All they've known is this government. And they've come to believe the lie that this is the best that can happen to this country. And you know how I know that they believe this lie? Is because some of these people who can vote now, they're voting this government. No young person should be voting the Labour Party government. No young person. Because they've been denied the opportunities. They've been denied the jobs. They've been denied that dream. Yet they do it because that's all they know. So we have a lot of work to do, I believe. We have a lot of work to convince people that there is another way. There is a better way. And we need to put our efforts around that. We need to really, get our efforts. And once this government is out of the way, you then begin to rebuild the economy. You begin to rebuild the economy. It's a lamb for. That's why I'm strong. Let's rebuild this economy. And we can do it because, as I said before, we have everything already in place. We have the natural resources. We have the human resource. What we need is just to bring those two together. Have a society that is based on merit, create opportunities for young people. So those who cannot go the route of academics will find other skills that they can do. They can go into plumbing, they can go into doing electricity, into masonry, into building, all the things. Make sure that there are skills that are taught to these people. And they can, in fact, become consultants overseas. They can take their skills overseas and come back to Dominica, but the base would be in Dominica. So that's the second important thing that we need to do, to rebuild this economy. And the third thing that we need to do, I believe, is to become more united as a people. One of the things that is probably the most disturbing about our very small island, and Dominica is small, 70,000 people. 70,000 people. I tell people when I went to school in the United States, every weekend during college football, there were 80,000 people in that stadium. Sometimes you go up to 88,000. But the fact of the matter is that that little stadium was holding the population plus several other thousands of Dominicans. So we're not a big country. In terms of job creation, we don't have to create 100,000 jobs. For 70,000 population, you probably need to create 20,000 good paying jobs. And then people begin to have choices. They can now work twice, so they can now build their homes faster. They can now pay their mortgage faster. They will not depend on government. That's the kind of dream. That's the kind of thing I want to see in Dominica. That's the kind of thing that is possible. And it has been done elsewhere. We have the Singapore example. If you go to Singapore, Singapore is roughly the size of Dominica. Yeah, this is one of the most prosperous countries in the world because its leaders had a vision for where the country needed to go. In Dominica, the only vision it appears this government has is the vision for their own bank accounts. And this cannot be because they're riding on the backs and on the shoulders of Dominicans. And so we, the people, and I'll speak for we the people now, we the people need to do what we have to do to get rid of this administration. And that is the simple solution. You get rid of them, and then you look to put people in place who can run things, who can truly run things. It's not just saying you run things and you're running everything to the ground. That's not what we want. We want you to run things that will develop the country, that will allow our young people to grow and to dream, to own a home, their own home, for example. That if they want, they can add to it, they can extend, they can move from 2 rooms to 4 rooms if they want to over time. That's the kind of thing you want, you know. You want people to have that liberty and that freedom. So there's a lot that I could say, but I think I'll stop here just to begin to talk about some of the solutions that we have. But for us to accomplish anything, we absolutely have to get rid. So let us make this our number 1 priority. Okay, and that is working towards the next election to get rid of this government, and let us then begin that process of building Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fountain. I think all of us will agree that to move this little rock of ours forward is not, it's not rocket science. It's really not rocket science, because I believe that we have everything, as Thompson was saying, that we need, and the only thing that is necessary to take the next step is to, first of all, put a system in place where a government is selected by the people, which meets the wishes of the people. And what is so difficult for a government, a party that is in office for right now 22 years, and in the by the next cycle, electoral cycle, it will be 25 years. What is so difficult to actually allow people to enjoy a free electoral process where persons can choose the government of their choice? What is so difficult about that? And choosing a government of their own free will is simple. Allow for free and fair elections. Allow for campaign financing regulations, because it is immoral and it is criminal that one political party could spend up to $70 million on an election campaign with all type of excesses in buying votes and fooling the population. So, what is so difficult? That after a hurricane, that the government should be involved in a citrus rehabilitation program to employ its citizens in agriculture, or a coconut rehabilitation project, where we would right now, we are moving into how many years since Hurricane Maria, that we still do not have a coconut rehabilitation project. How can we be satisfied that a country that has what, 365 rivers flowing into the sea, we import water from all over the world? As at my back there, the Dominica Grammar School assisted in the formation of thousands of Dominicans, all specialties. I'm proud to say that I'm an old grammar school boy. Shouldn't our contractors who came from grammar school be proud of building this grammar school project? Or our architects and engineers who the Dominica Grammar School helped to form be involved in the design and construction of the grammar school that was our alma mater? Instead, we see a Dominican Grammar School, the hoarding turned painted red. And you are asking, who is the contractor? Was this project ever bidded? And who is undertaking this project? I mean, you do not have to be a political party hack for you to agree that there are some basic things in this country that have to be put right. And in living and in exploring the Dominican dream, we have to look at some of those basic things. I mean, we had Kubuli beer and it went to St. Vincent, and yet Dominicans still call Kubuli, how they say it? Sesanu, so, you know. Yes, you understand where I'm coming from? Kubuli, for God's sake, is not made in Dominica anymore. You understand what I mean? The population, we've got a significant Chinese and Haitian population in Dominica today, and yet we are still underpopulated. You know, as they come, our people are going. So, brothers and sisters, it is a matter of basic common sense that we have to be able to have this type of discussions and allow people to listen and to see how we can actually find some solutions to our demise. Because where we are going right now, we are not on the right track. At this stage, I am going to open the floor again to you, the audience. If you are not prepared to make contributions, I am going to then get some general comments from the rest of the panel, because within the next, we should be ending at 9:30. So we have just about 35 more minutes of the discussion. Yes, sir, you could go ahead. Yeah, you could take the mic so that, because you're on mic.
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. One of the things that I'm looking at, how do you impact such knowledge to the youths and the young people? Right? And you can only do that, I believe, by pamphlets. You can meet them on the ground. You can speak to them in communities. Now, I had an encounter that was
Yeah, I was just saying, how do you impart that knowledge to the young people in Dominica? You can either impart it by your pamphlets, probably meeting them on the ground and talking to them. But I believe the personal touch of every individual is very important. And everyone who wants a change has to do that, some way, somehow. Saturday, I was in Portsmouth. That's my community. I live in Kenfield, actually. I'm from Portsmouth. I had business when Ross departed. I was one of the persons who tried to move people to rally, even try to get a class action lawsuit against the government. But everybody backed up. Right? Right now, I have lost that business. But here's this young man who came to me. He encountered me, right? Long and short, he asked me, he's a liberal. He said, okay. I said, well, you're a liberal. Do you believe that you can, we need a change in person? He said, yes. I said, but he still wants to go Labour. I tell him, why do you want to go Labour? Do you believe that the Labour Party is corrupt? He said, no, the parties, the parties before was corrupt. So I tell him, okay, let us look at corruption from that level. You look at former prime ministers, you look at Mary Eugenie Charles, who I worked with for a pretty long time as a bodyguard. And she never took anything from the state. Actually, she was getting probably $5,000 then. She ensured that 50% of that went to the education trust fund. I mean, she could afford. But what she was doing, and she told us definitely that she do not want this state. Dominica is too poor for her to actually take anything from this country. She wants to see this country develop because she inherited something that was really, that she had to start from scratch, including feeder roads and proper roads in the country, healthcare and so on, that she brought up to a certain level. Now, within that short period, she said, or within a 15 years, right? She actually took Dominica from where it was to where it was supposed to be. So I tell him, compare that to you as a child growing up. Dominica attaining independence, it started at that level. You started as a baby. When you reach the age of 20 years, you're supposed to be an adult. You are left on your own. Within the next 20 years, you're supposed to be achieve, probably build your own home, have your own personal things. And from then, it's supposed to be sweet sailing. No, well, not sweet sailing, but actually you're supposed to reap the benefits of your hard labor. I said, look at Dominica today. After 20 years, after 40 years, are you better? Is your situation better? He started telling me, no, I'm not seeing it. Right? My situation is not better. I have gone down. I've regressed. So I tell him, that is what has happened to Dominica over the last 20 years with the present government that you're voting. We haven't made any progress. So I told him, the best thing you can do is to get knowledgeable, seek the right person, talk with them. He said, but can you come and speak to some of the young people on the ground? Let them know what was happening. I told him again, the Prime Minister during Eugenie Charles, she never even allowed the state to pay any of her bills. She took it on her own. And not only that, notwithstanding that, she would never allow any of her ministers to go on a conference if it wasn't sponsored by the state that was offering that type of thing. She said, if it's not fruitful for the country, she would not allow them to go because Dominica itself cannot afford that, right? So what she used to do, she would tell them, send the package, let me send the right people. If you cannot give me a proper package, which is beneficial for the country, I'm not sending my people because it makes no sense, right? And within that time, you had even Mr. James, who was the former Prime Minister, and Mr. James lived at his own home. So I told him, look at your Prime Minister today. He has 3 houses. He's building actually 2, and he's building a 3rd one, and we don't know how many more he has, you know. And here he has used state money to leave you poor, to abuse you, and then you come back and beg him. And then you tell me you still want to vote that. He said, but that's true, you know. I don't want to vote them people there anymore. We need people like you to come down and talk to us, grassroots level on the ground. So that's what I'm talking about. Right now, what I believe needs to be done, we have a panel discussion. Yes, everybody's, you know, happy and we're speaking in big terms or whatever. But we need to go down on the ground and speak to that grassroots man. The grassroots man not hearing about electoral reform. You know. All he wants to know, what is my next bread and butter? Can you give it to me? And how are you going to give it to me? No, this fellow is going to come there and they'll just flung themselves to, hey, look how much money, look $100. Look that. Boy, I have that for the time being, you know, I happy, I'll put an X for them. Not that the grassroots man wants to know. You have to tell him, listen, do you have a better future? Will your future be brighter? You explain the past, what the past is about, and then you explain what are you getting today and tomorrow. Is it better for you? And if it is not better for them, well, tell them, forget it. Let us look at what is better. What are we offering now? We have good ideas, good intentions, everything like that. But we need to be on that ground with them. You go in the Portsmouth market every day and you'll see them fellas groveling to sell. But you have to engage them. Because I told them straight, Ian is not doing a shit for you. All Ian do is drink his rum and he know he has a chassis. But when you want to change, when you want to see change, I tell him, look at Ross. Ross was there. We were better. All of us was growing. You know? But all these fellas do, they come, they swing there. I say, how many hotels you see in Portsmouth that's thriving? Not one. Only Kepinski probably. Because they are sponsoring Kepinski, subsidizing it, whatever the case may be. But you don't have, you have the Moroccan hotel, you have an Anichi hotel, they cannot even finish it because they have no funds. You get what I'm saying? So what are they putting there for us? White elephants? As far as I'm concerned, we are black people and we are supposed to own our country. And we should be little millionaires in our country. We shouldn't be sitting back there. Like I told him straight, the marijuana that we're talking about, we have the best ganja. I used to fight weed. But what? Right now, weed is the king now. We use that same weed. We create markets for it. We legalize it. And we put greenhouses, whatever the case may be. And we have a cooperative like our bananas. That's right. So therefore, we can take that weed, package it, and maybe sell it at least 300 US or 300 Canadian to the Canadian government per pound legally. And what the government can do is tax it probably 20% or 25%. We have money flowing. That's right. I told him, look at the water. The same water we can take. Antigua don't have water. St. Martin, Anguilla. Why don't we take our water? Create a market because we are all the OECS governments together. Create, like we get these big barges, these big bladders that hold about 1 million gallons. And we take this thing, it can be 1 cent a gallon. We take millions of gallons and we just drive up, especially in this dry weather, to them people. So you carry in about 10 of these bladders, 1 million gallons each in each bladder, and it's floating on this and you bring it up there. And you sell it. All these are avenues where we can make money. But what you're talking about, CBI what? That's what we know. We knew our forefathers working that soil, working hard, and actually uplifting us. That is how all of us went to school, you know. It's not by sitting down there. And I think we still have that spirit, like Dr. Fontaine said, and I'm humbled by his humility. And I believe that man has probably, whatever happened to him now, I think it has been divine. That right now it has developed a spirit of upliftment within the people. And the young people, we need to use Dr. Fontaine and his message to drive that force forward, because that is the right thing for us. The teachers want to hear you. Many people want to hear you, but all of them have this fear. And it's time that people come out from this fear. And the only way you can do it is to collectively go out there, little groups, we talk to young people and we have movement. It's not by just having a little panel discussion. Yeah, a few of us, yeah. But that little panel discussion, in the eyes of God, if you look at it, right? Like he did with King, like King David and these fellows. He took them from small and he tell them, let me tell you, what you all are doing is going to blossom. You take this little movement and you put it before God and you put it forward. And eventually, that thing is going to blossom so much that this corruption and this evil that is within this country, you'll see the clearing of it. You'll see actually an upheaval of a new spirit that is not a spirit of fear, but a spirit that wants to earn, that wants to move forward, a driving force that wants to see our people come back and work, and develop that little nature out of us. Make it into what it is.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. And basically, this is why. This is what we are hoping that tonight's activity will actually do, is sowing the seed so that we can start spreading the news around, the information, away from the shouting that our young people particularly have been accustomed with. And I think that we have to also look at various avenues of doing it. Let me announce to you that one area that we believe that we will be able to spread the word and to build the consciousness, particularly among our youth and the population, is we'll be launching a program on the 6th of August. Laugh, Dominica, laugh. Because the country is just too serious and tense. Dominicans do not laugh anymore. So on the 6th of August this year, we are going to have our first comedy competition, where we are actually going to get our comedians out on the road to laugh and make you laugh and tell jokes. Everybody seems to be too tense in the country. So look out, Dominica, for laugh, Dominica, laugh.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thank you, gentlemen, for your comments, because these were very timely.
But I want to say, we need everybody to do like you. See the conversation you have? I do those conversations sometimes. But if more of us do it, if more of us reach out, imagine Leonard Thompson, few of us have to go all around and talk to every single young person. You know how difficult that is? When we give inspiration, we ourselves do it. You do it. We multiply it. We go. We create that revolution. We create that social revolution. We all have a responsibility. That's why I said earlier on, we want to hear the voice of the Council of Churches, because when they speak, the rest of the nation knows something is wrong. We want to hear the voice of the Evangelical Association, of the unions, of the other groups. But every single one of us, if we do what you do, the word is going to keep going. So what I want us to do is to put this in our hands. The conversation you're a young person, all of us, take it as our job. See it as our job to go out there and have one of those conversations, and we will create the revolution.
If I could add as well, talking about having that conversation, thanks very much for this input. I thought that was very good, because it shows as well the power of talking to people, because we assume that they understand like us, okay? But here it was, you were able to explain to somebody something which you might think is obvious, But it's at the end of your conversation that he admitted what you're saying is true, which tells me that he did not see it that way before. I think sometimes we miss the point. We tend to believe that people know, okay, Dominica, so everybody must know Dominica. Okay. We tend to think that this government is not working, so everybody must know that. But there are people who actually believe that this government is doing a great job. Now, if you engage them in conversation, they'll have a difficulty explaining to you exactly how they came by that conclusion, but that's their conclusion. And they've satisfied themselves that that is in fact the truth. So that's why we need to talk more to people. We need to find out what's going on with them. And I did some of that over the weekend. And I was shocked by the number of people who I thought were die-hard labor rights, who would never vote another party, saying, I'm fed up, I'm tired. This country is hard. I will not vote them people again. I had several people tell me I will not vote them people again. And then I told my friend, and he says, well, wait until election comes around. And they start, but we need to fight against. And that's why I think the strategy of how we get this number one priority right. How do we get it right? That's part of it, of talking to people, of convincing them, of opening their eyes. Let them see. We have to, because let's not take it for granted. Let's not believe that they know as much as we know, or they understand as much as we understand.
So let me add one other thing, because it's important for us to understand. Remember, we are well on our way with the job. We need to bring more people on board by talking to them. Part of the challenge is that the majority rejected this government. A lot of people have gotten the message already. We need much more to get it. The reason why they are there right now is because they stole the election, they cheated. But we need a bigger majority, we need a bigger swing. And we need all of these people to come on board and say, next time we're not allowing you to cheat. But again, that comes with talking and showing young people what is going on is not right. But I just don't want us to forget that the government has already lost. There's already a majority of us here who voted rightly and duly, who have already rejected this government. And they are not UWP supporters only. They were Freedom Party supporters, because we had only 2 persons in there. They were independent people. I'm saying that because I'm saying to you that there are a majority of us who already realize, but what we want is a bigger majority, especially the young people. So we have our job well cut out for us. Let's go out there, and as they understand what's going on, more of us will stand up and say, we will no longer allow you to frustrate the will of the majority, and we will grow that majority to become a huge one. But it takes talking to people like you did. Thank you so much, my brother.
Leonard.
McIntyre Paul. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The state of play in Dominica today is very interesting. And those of us who believe that anything different is going to happen if we sit down and wait for leaders or somebody else to come and talk to us, nothing will change. So tonight, while the politicians have long accepted the responsibility of speaking to people and of doing the best job of engaging the people, finding the right language, finding the right conversations, finding the right points of interest to engage them on and to change their minds about, the people also have a responsibility to listen and to learn and to align their dreams with what makes sense in the governance of Dominica. I am disappointed that in the times that we live, it is necessary to sit down and explain to somebody that you are suffering, and the cause of your suffering is the way your government is operating. I'm disappointed in that, because we are in the middle of I call it a romance. Dr. Thompson Fontaine has just written a book about the Maroons of Dominica, which take us back hundreds of years ago to what our ancestors did when they were in survival mode. What they did to survive. They didn't even get to the state where they thrived, because Maroons were all about survival and not living in slavery. But what they did cleared the way for us so many hundreds of years later to be free people. And what are we doing with that freedom that they sacrificed for? What are we doing with that freedom that other people fought for us to have today? So this morning, I'm listening to a conversation on the radio. It's about Reno in Grenada and the concerns of a Grenadian as to Grenadians being denied an opportunity that Reno has received to build a road in Grenada. And in the conversation on the radio, it's coming to the fore that this is just like Dominica. And several times I heard the host make the point that when I play the state for you, take out Grenada and put Dominica. And this is what we have. Listen to me carefully, Dominicans. Reno is from St. Lucia. And in Dominica, as Reno followed Reno's dream to become something in the construction sector and put energy and resources behind that dream, we had Dominicans who had dreams as well of becoming big in the construction sector, of growing their talents and skills, expanding their influence. But Reno in St. Lucia did better in St. Lucia than the Renos in Dominica at the time were able to do in Dominica. Because Reno was able to work. Reno was able to get government jobs and major infrastructure projects in St. Lucia. In Dominica, we had a government that was very happy to be shutting down those who had dreams and could grow in the sector. Oliver Walsh of Walsh Trucking. I'm mentioning a name because I know him and I know his experience. He was at one stage in Dominica like Reno was in St. Lucia. Those were the early days, and Reno grew out of that. Today, Reno is in Dominica because he has been able to build capacity from working in St. Lucia, his home country. Where are the Dominicans who have been able to build capacity in the construction sector? By working in the construction sector and in the build out of the economic infrastructure of Dominica. All of them in the last 5 to 10 years at least have had less and less capacity to the point where they're finding it difficult on their own to bid for jobs in the construction sector that are funded by the EU. In many cases, they have to pull themselves together so they can meet the turnover requirement to bid on projects when Reno can do it alone in Dominica. So what are we talking about? We don't like our own. This Dominica for Dominicans at home and abroad is not the mantra or the driving force of the government that has run Dominica for the last 22 years. This government does not love Dominicans. And Dominicans tolerate the fact that they have a government that does not look out for them. They don't matter, they don't count, their lives don't matter, but they don't care. And they have to start to care. They have to start to care. I want to stand up now. For 5 minutes, I want to stand up. Reno, talk about Reno again, has done work in Dominica in the last few years. One of the jobs that Reno has done is the Margaret Hospital. Who was responsible for the Margaret Hospital? Which Dominica company was able to bid on the Margaret Hospital? Not one. None. Stewart Construction is in Margaret. That's where it's based. Didn't have a chance to enter a bid to say, I want to, yes, here's my bid to build a hospital. Nothing. Why did that happen? Because the building of the Margaret Hospital was in the hands of MMC that has carte blanche from the government to hire who they want on any public sector project in Dominica that they're responsible for. And right now, look at who they're responsible for all. So Reno built the hospital. And did not receive 1 red cent from the Consolidated Fund of Dominica. They were paid by MMC, and MMC charged the government. So they took one price from Reno, took the price from Reno, they added theirs to it, and they said to the government, that is your bill for the Margaret Hospital. That's how it works, that's how it goes around. So when we talk about citizenship by investment, and we talk about our concerns about citizenship by investment, we recognize that citizenship by investment was supposed to be an initiative to raise capital for development purposes in Dominica that goes back to Mary Eugenia Childs of blessed memory, the Freedom Party back in the early 1990s. Came through the United Workers' Party, when on the United Workers' Party, for the first time, arrangements were made for money to come directly into the Consolidated Fund as opposed to staying in escrow and building certain projects for developers outside. We still have that component, it's called the real estate component. And we have the new component where the money is coming directly into the treasury. Sky has added a third component where the money that's supposed to be coming into the treasury stays outside with its friends. And they do what they want with it. So understand well, if our money that we work hard for, and our money that is collected from the sale of our citizenship, our birthright, is used in a way that benefits outsiders and not our own people in Dominica, where are we going? And how are these people living in Dominica, how are those of us who live in Dominica supposed to pursue our worthwhile dreams about prosperity and progress? It's not going to happen, because the country that belongs to us is not being made to work for us. It's working for others. Others are becoming filthy rich on the back of Dominicans, while the majority of Dominicans sink deeper and deeper into poverty. And it is alarming to me that the Dominicans who day after day are sinking deeper and deeper into poverty and dependency need to be told over and over and over again what is wrong with them, why things are the way they are. We need to wake up. 2016 to 2020, 23,794 people received citizenship of Dominica. The amount of money that was to be collected was $5.4 billion. We only received 1.4 billion, 1.2 billion into the treasury. We have an outstanding balance of $4.2 billion that is out there somewhere under the control of people who are using it to do as they please. So Severin McKenzie just spoke about the Dominican Grammar School. The Dominican Grammar School that is being built with CBI passport money by MMC without asking any single Dominican engineer, any single Dominican architect, any single Dominican construction company a question about whether they have the capability to build this out. MMCE is doing it as they have built the apartments and well, they've taken control of the apartments, they've handed it to Chinese, they've handed it to other foreign contractors. They're now building the Dominican Grammar School. Sarah Mackenzie is an architect. He went to the Dominican Grammar School. So you see what I mean when I say the chances for Dominicans to pursue their dreams are being shattered. Where are you going to go if on a project like that, no Dominican has the opportunity to enter a bid, no Dominican company has the ability to enter a bid? But the project is being paid for not by funds from outside, not by loans from the World Bank or the IMF, not by loans from the International Development Agency, not by loans from Citibank. The project is being paid for with funds from the Citizenship by Investment Program. And we, unlike all the other countries close by to us in the OECS, we have a lot of citizenship by investment money that we're spending on public sector infrastructure projects to the tune of $300 to $400 million a year over the past couple of years. Are you seeing the effects of that? Well, when all that amount of money is spent and you understand that on one project like the Kempinski in Portsmouth, two gentlemen from the foreign can go away with $163 million of our passport-induced money, you understand what's going on. Before the hotel opened to receive its first guest, the gentleman who claimed to be the developers had gone away with their profits, $163 million worth of it. What is this? Where does that happen in the world? That before the enterprise that you build is able to go into operation, you have profits of $163 million to put in your pocket. What is the occupancy of the hotel today? We don't know. What amount of sustainable jobs is it supporting? We don't know, but we have it. And the story goes on and on. And unless we understand what our responsibility is to say enough, because we've had enough. We've had enough. It's just going to continue. And when we are so hesitant to understand how our lives are being devalued, to understand how people are stepping on our backs to their multi-million-dollar fame and fortune while we suffer. Dominicans did not receive 1 red cent of their own citizenship by investment money to help them through the COVID pandemic. Not 1 cent. People ask for stimulus package, people ask for assistance, never came. We have a situation now of a gas crisis and difficulties around the world in the supply chain and so on coming out of COVID. People need relief. People need to be relieved. People are losing their jobs. People have destroyed their savings completely. Dominica is a wasteland of opportunity. You know, we sit down there just watching each other every day get poorer and poorer and poorer. And one man is sitting down on the country's money, sharing it, giving it to other people to do what they want with it. And we don't understand the extent to which our lives, right in front of our faces, being devalued. We must do something about it. And we transmit a burden of responsibility to, I don't know who, to come to us every day, to talk to us, and to do the things that McIntyre Paul is doing, which are necessary. And all of us must do it. And hopefully when all of us do it, or 90% are involved in it on that on-the-ground work, going door to door, we're not going to be turned away, or the effect is not going to be turned back when our passport money from the foreign comes in the hundreds of millions to give handouts and to purchase another election. One of the most dangerous things that happened to Dominica is this attack that the government has launched on the right of the people to elect their own government of the people, by the people, for the people. It is not Roosevelt's Carrot or anybody else's responsibility to decide for themselves who the government should be. That responsibility rests with the people in a democracy. What has happened over the last few election cycles, you see that right being taken away from people. And the sitting government saying to you, listen, that's not for you. We will decide who the government of Dominica is, and that means nobody else will be the government of Dominica, because we'll so organize elections and we'll so organize the influences at election time and the abuses of incumbency to ensure that we purchase the election. And rather than have votes of conscience that determine government of the people, by the people, for the people, we have purchased elections, rigged elections, and elections that do not reflect the will of the majority of the people of Dominica. So we have to change that. But it's not for Kent alone, or Thompson Fontaine alone, or Reverend Mackenzie. It's for all of us to change and to stand up and accept responsibility for where we are and where we are going, and to change course if we don't like where we are going, and I suspect we don't like it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Linton. We are just into the last few minutes of the discussion. And I would like at this stage to call on, to go virtual to Bernard Ito. He will make his final comments. Bernard.
Thank you, Mackenzie. I think all the things that have been said as far as the governance goes, as far as the need to remove this government and to replace the governance structures that we have now, has been made very well. The case has been made. I think we're all in agreement with the case. Let me maybe spend the last few minutes of my closing remarks talking about what it will take to develop, what does it take fundamentally to develop a country? What does it take to develop an economy? Who made it? The countries who were dirt poor, probably lower GDP per capita levels than us 40, 50 years ago, and has made it. How have they made it? What should we learn from them? Whom should we learn from? And if you look at the history of countries like Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, the Asian Tigers, China from 1978. If you look at what they have done, they have come to the realization, which many economists have come to know now, that economic growth and development is not fundamentally about resources per se. It is fundamentally about the human capacity and imagination to create resources and wealth out of ideas, imagination, coordination. That is the fundamental foundation that drives the development of any country. Nothing is a resource until the human mind finds a use for it. Oil was a nuisance until the late 1800s, when we invented automotives and other equipment that could make oil then a very valuable resource. So you see, nothing in itself is a resource outside of the human imagination and capacity to create a better life, an easier life using our ideas, our knowledge of natural forces, our knowledge of how humans work together, and to bring that together. In other words, the hardware, the soil, the plants, the rocks, the minerals, the things that exist in nature as things, are not what necessarily drives economic growth and development in a country. We know that because we can look at Africa, which is one of the most richest countries from a natural mineral resource point of view, yet suffer the inability to translate that potential stuff, I wouldn't call it a resource, that potential stuff into a resource, into wealth. And that is the fundamental question that we have to say to ourselves in Dominica. How do we go with the knowledge that it is knowledge, ideas, and the coordination of people that creates wealth. And fundamentally understand that so that we can create an economy that is booming for 70,000 people. 70,000 people is an easy job. I will be honest, this should be a mom and pop operation. 70,000 people to create 20,000 jobs in a global economy with all sorts of opportunities, where we know that what it takes is knowledge, intelligence, creativity, motivation, organization. So then that's the software of a country that creates wealth out of the resources that lie around it. And that's the fundamental idea of what we must aspire to in Dominica. We must become a knowledge-focused economy, and we missed the boat on this in the turn of the 20th century when that happened. That happened. The world moved away from natural resources into knowledge resources, and we missed the boat. We didn't even realize the boat existed, but it did. And that is what we must pivot to now. This government has completely missed that it is the human capital that they must value most. That is the human capital they must invest most in. And not only must they value and invest in them, they must coordinate them. That they must, in fact, get them to cooperate and work together. And that is impossible when you create a culture of division, partisanship, tribalism, favoritism, where it's not a meritocracy, but it's who you know, not what you know. In that environment, you cannot create the coordination of knowledges that are necessary to create the wealth that drives 21st century economy. And so we have here with us in the 21st century reality, an 18th century plantation mentality and operational software of governance and mental models of how we approach our world. And that is the fundamental thing that we have to say to ourselves as Dominicans. We have to wake up to that reality. And we have to have people in place who knows that reality, not only knows it, but can translate that 21st century realization of knowledge economies into outcomes for our people. We who know better, who have the training and the expertise in those areas, have a responsibility to come back to Mama Dominica, who trained us, who sent us to school to study these things, who made us have the experiences to now be able to bring that back to Dominica, to invest in our island. We have a responsibility for Dominica to invest, to reap that investment that it did when it sent me to convent prep and when I attended school and I was able to have a happy childhood in Dominica. And all of us have similar experience, and it's time for Dominica to reap that harvest that is us. But there's someone keeping that harvest outside the door. And Dominica is unable to reap that harvest of its minds, of its people, of its talent, to understand what it takes to build a 21st century Dominica. We can do this thing. We can create 20,000 well-paying jobs, and due to the multiplier effect and spillover effects, that will ripple through the entire economy and blossom the economy. Because when you create high-tech jobs and when you are able to do back-end processing for companies like Intel and Google, and when you're able to do cloud computing applications, and when you're able to do those things, not everyone has to do it. It is not an elitist economy, because when those people form the core of the economy, they spend on buildings, they drive agriculture, they want fresh food, they spend on entertainment, they spend on travel, they spend on personal services, haircuts, and so forth. And you create an economic core based on those principles, where you contract with the metropolitan areas for areas that we have identified we can do well, and we will invest in the economy. This is not a pipe dream. That's what India does. India was a very poor country, but said, I will focus on my human capital and build companies that contract with international companies to do back-end processing and work my way up the value chain into programming and application development and those sort of things. That is where the world stands now. This is not esoteric things anymore. This is commonplace things. Everybody needs to be into some sort of data application where we understand how to use data, knowledge, and creativity to create a new economy. And we have people who can lead this charge, not this government. They have no idea of those things. They talk about digital economy. They don't understand what it takes to have a digital culture where you create fairness, opportunity, meritocracy, a culture of collaboration and creation, and being able to talk at a level that is in line with the rest of the world's expectations of a knowledge economy. And so that's our problem. And the political dimensions we know so well. But as we said, we need to clear the road of the political dimension so we can get on with the real work to be done, because we know what is to be done. There are people who are yearning and fighting and chomping at the bit to go at this, because we see the possibilities and it is so clear what is to be done. There's so many examples of what is to be done. Yet we are not allowed to do the work that really destiny has trained us for. Our experiences in Dominica has trained us for. Our emotional yearnings to see and to live in a better country of all these years has prepared us for. And that yearning and that emotional inheritance from the Maroons and all of those things has intersected now with the ability to do that, because the world has gone digital and now allows us to transcend the limitations of being on a small island with limited natural resources. It has allowed us to transcend that, because now the world is our market. And so a small population doesn't constrain us anymore. We sell to the world. A small population doesn't constrain us anymore. It enables us, because we only have to create so many jobs so that our GDP per capita can match Switzerland. The reality, the digital reality, the transformation of society has caught up to our aspirations and our desires. And we only need to have these two things come together, to have the fusion, to release that energy and to take Dominica to this amazing future that we all know it could always be. It is here, it has happened, but we are stuck because we do not have governance, people, leaders who understand those realities and are interested in bringing it to fruition. So that's our mission, not just us as leaders, but for every Dominican to reflect upon that and to move forward into that future that I am telling you is right there for the taking. So with that, I say thanks for the opportunity for the conversation, for all my colleagues here on the panel and for being with you here this evening. Let us go forward and make this thing true. Let us go forward and make this dream materialize.
Thank you. As I said at the beginning of the program, this is the first of many discussions that we hope to have, because unlike some people who believe that talking is too much and then you just have to jump into action, without talk and discussion and trying to get some common ground, it will be more difficult to be able to achieve the goals that we. One of the things that we are sure about is that Dominica has quite a bit of resources, and we have the human resources both at home and abroad, and we can in fact create our own dream and make it a reality. We just have to be smart. But one of the main problems that's actually confronting the country is the fact that there is an unequal access to money. And it appears that the money that the government and the Dominican Labour Party has access to is in fact creating serious hardships for the sectors of the nation. Brothers and sisters, let me ask a member of NJAM, Paula Celestine, to just make the closing remarks. Oh, I in the earlier conversation, Lofty, I'm sorry about that. So Loftus Durham will give the closing remarks. Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right, well, let me say a special evening to everyone in the listening audience. I'm charged with the responsibility tonight to give the vote of thanks And so first and foremost, let me give the Creator that thank you for bringing us here tonight. Let me also thank as well the panelists tonight who did a very good job, a splendid job. Honorable Lennox Linton, Ken Vital, Thompson Fontaine, the moderator as well, did an excellent job in terms of tying things together, neat and nice. We had also the leader of the Freedom Party. We heard an excuse came in for Annette Sanford. So those persons who basically gave you much food for thought tonight, I want to thank them on your behalf. The discussion we had tonight entitled Exploring the Dominican Dream. And I love how not Ken, but brother Ito asked the question, is there really a dream? And based on what I heard tonight, and I guess you as well, you will say an emphatic yes, that there is a dream, but it's just that that dream is being stifled, that dream has been muffled, and so it is up to us to ensure that that dream becomes a reality. The onus is on us. I had a discussion yesterday with a gentleman named Mr. Akash Maharaj. And that gentleman basically said something that stayed with me, and I want to share it with you guys before I pass over to the moderator. The question was asked of him yesterday, what are some of the signs or symptoms of a very corrupt country where corruption thrives? And one of the things that that guy said was that is where the people, they are satisfied with accepting bribes. That is one of the hallmarks of where a country is entrenched in corruption or corrupt activities. And if you look at Dominica today, our Dominica today, you will understand the gravity of that man's statement. In that there's a sense of hopelessness, there's a sense of despair that is pervading the land. And it is only the fittest of the fittest that will not succumb under pressure to bribes, treating, or whatever it is that goes with corruption or corruptive activities. And so it is that sense of despair, that sense of hopelessness, that discussions like that will try its very best to eradicate or lessen. And so again, I want to thank the persons who put it together. And I want to thank the many persons, the hundreds of you tonight on the different social media platforms who tuned in and basically had your comments as well in terms of the engagement. Sorry that we could not take some of your questions and ventilate them to the panelists so that they could answer, but time has basically come and gone. On a more Thompson Fontaine, somebody said on the live that Sudan is going with you. You look very well. I think some persons named Fan Chu from Russo constituency. And a lot of other comments were generated on the live. So I want to thank the hundreds of persons who were there. They were on different platforms. Also Cairo FM, Q95 as well, the radio stations. I want to thank them and their listeners as well, and the management for taking time off to bring to the wider population such very interesting and informative discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. And one more point. I really want to echo and reiterate Mr. Paul's point in that after all these niceties in terms of talk, it would be the best thing for if that talk now can be translated into some kind of not just action, but active action, in that we need to take what was discussed here tonight and let it permeate through the communities, on the blocks, in the bars, under the mango trees. That is where that talk we had tonight going to mean much. And so I just want to thank Paul for making that comment. And I implore on all of us now, wherever we can, bring that message far and wide in our little corner. That is where it matters most. And I just want to implore again on the organizers of that event. I am part of it. Let us put our words into action, or more action, because we are indeed taking some kind of action by helping facilitate that kind of community engagement. Because like Paul said, like Leonard said, and some of you guys said, that is where it matters. The ordinary man on the street, the ordinary woman on the street, basically what is on their mind is tomorrow, is the bread and butter, the breakfast, the lunch. Electoral reform and these matters, it's somewhere there, but it is not at the forefront. So it is we going out there and kind of soaking it in, letting them understand it's true your daily needs must be met, but you have a country as well to take care of. And so with those few words, I just want to say thank you very much.
Just one question that I have. So you say this going on. This meeting, this to
Well, if you ask me, and I would want to think that the panelists here, they would be for that outreach activity. But as for the civic vibes that Paula and we are part and parcel of, I can tell you straight off, that is part of our culture, going out there to spread the word. So I would want to think that NJAM and the other folks, the political parties, they are doing their best, but as we always say, much more can be done. And I think the Dominican population, by and large, they need that kind of extra push in that department. I heard Mr. Leonard said that persons have to take responsibility. Yes, but it is up to us to kind of get them to realize that responsibility is key to nation building.
Well, I volunteered to moderate this one and to be part of this one, but I think that it has to be a united approach where some of the initiatives should be coming from the communities themselves. We have to do certain things so that communities, because one of the unfortunate things about what is happening in Dominica today is we have so much access to the media and to be able to communicate, and we are not taking advantage of it. Because here we are in this small audience tonight, but we have thousands participating and being part of the live on Facebook and the various platforms. So I think we have not been taking advantage in terms of reaching out and using the technology. So so what I would encourage is that persons in the communities organize these activities. And those who cannot come, just as Bernard Ito is joining us from Texas, we could join people, and those who can make it to the villages will make it, and those who cannot can be doing. But we have to be able to spread the word and approach this thing on a united front.
Yeah, like what Paul said, getting on the ground. So those young people are going to come, it will follow. Getting on the ground. And you do it for the parties.
No. That's why we say it has to be an all-inclusive approach to it. Because one of the things that has happened to Dominica over the years is that we have gone through a serious problem of mental slavery, where we need to liberate the minds of quite a significant section of the population, because I just have to think of what happened growing up at 15, 16, and the militancy that existed and the level of consciousness that existed in my generation of young people, and what exists today. You hardly get a young person even wanting to read a newspaper. And even when they see the information on their tablet, they delete it. And this is one of the reasons why we think that we have to use art and culture and the performing thing and get people and try to get out to the population, because this is what they have actually been able to take advantage of, the ignorance of the people, keeping them stupid. So on this note, let me thank everybody again and all the persons who joined us on the various social media platforms. I think we had a very good discussion. Clean, sweet, nice, no bashing, but we have to be able to accept that we can criticize our government. And this is the level of tolerance that we have to demand. People can meet in a forum like this and criticize the government if they are not satisfied with the things that they're doing. This is what we grew up with. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, panelists. Much appreciated. Thank you.